Welcome everybody. I'm really pleased that you can all join us this morning. I'd like to thank ARRLD for hosting this event and making it all possible, and for Laura Boone, our technical coordinator, who's had her work cut out for her this morning in trying to get us all here. And unfortunately, some people haven't been able to make it. A big special welcome to my guests, international guests they all are. So we have Dani Collins and Meg Tilly and Sabrina Jeffries. We're a fairly diverse range of authors because we write all sorts of different genres in the romance field, from Regency and medieval to contemporary romance and romantic suspense. So what I'm going to do is invite each author to show us her writing space and to tell us briefly about her next release. We're going to start off with you, Dani. Dani is a USA Today best-selling author who's joining us from Christina Lake in British Columbia. She writes sexy, witty, vibrant romance for Harlequin Presents and also for the Thule, Montana-born line. So Dani, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Alyssa. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. So this is my office space. It's actually an attic with a slanted ceiling. So my husband says I always look like Alice in Wonderland when I'm in this because I look like I'm touching the ceiling. And it's a very long room. I have one small window there. This is my desk, which I have cleaned for our event. And I have a lovely view outside down to my garden. It's hard to tell there. And that's about it. And I just basically stand here at this desk and write my little heart out. My upcoming book is Confessions of an Italian Marriage. Looks like it's kind of there. And I think in Australia, it'll look, this is the British version, but in Australia, it looks similar to this. This is the North American version, and it's going to come out September 1st. I based the hero off of the athletes in Murderball, which they're paraplegic athletes, but this one happens to be a secret agent like James Bond, and he fakes his death, and the heroine is like, oh no, you didn't. And so she tries to flush him out by pretending to get remarried. And he shows up and the story carries on from there. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Yeah, great. Also from Canada then, we have Meg Tilly. Now, Meg, I first saw you as your portrayal of Chloe as an actress in The Big Chill. And so you were better known to me to start with as an actress, particularly having won that Golden Globe Award for your role in Agnes of God. So very good. Congratulations. But now you've turned to writing, and I don't know whether you're ever going to go back into acting or not, but you know, you've written some young adult work, some literary women's fiction and screenplays. And I know that your journey into romance started with your Solace Island series, which I've enjoyed, and I'd love to see your writing space.
Okay, I would love to show you my writing space, but we were trying to get set up, and so I was like, okay, first, okay, I have this office that we got when we moved in here, but it has glass doors, and my husband, while we've been in quarantine, decided to take up electric guitar. So it was very noisy. I know. I think going through his, you know, midlife where he's like, when he was a teenager, had these squealing riffs and stuff, but it makes it a little difficult to hear. I mean, to hear my own thoughts. So I retreated to my bedroom. We have separate bedrooms because he snores really loud. So then we cuddle, and then I go to my room and he goes to his. So I was like, okay, what do? Do I show them the room that it was supposed to be my writing room, but really I'm at a desk in my bedroom. So I've got a photo, but I can't that I can show you of where, wait, can you, well, no. So that's my desk, and it's in the corner, and that's where I'm doing my writing. And I started a YouTube channel called Meg's Cozy Tea Time last week because, I don't know, he talked me into that. But I do have here in my writing space, so I put stuff over here to shore me up and be like, yes, you can do it. So I have like different awards I won for writing and acting, but I do have the Golden Globe, so I'll show you because you mentioned it.
That's a treat.
Ta-da! It's really heavy. It's like you could kill somebody with this. It's really heavy. Okay, that's all. So that's like my thing. I've got my books over there, but I don't actually write in here. I write in my bedroom, like in this little corner. That's
Great.
all.
And tell us about your upcoming release. What's coming up next for you that we can get?
Okay, so I did the Solace Island series, which is romantic suspense, and then I couldn't just leave Mary, who was the friend of Zelia's. Everybody's like, what happened to her? So I did one standalone with her that takes place in Los Angeles, and then now I'm starting, and that one comes out next summer, but we don't have a title, but I've handed it in, so we're in the editing process. So it just has Untitled on the manuscript, and then it has my name, of course. And then I've just started a new series, and I've been doing romantic suspense, but this new series, I didn't want to have bodies. Go figure. I just didn't want to be killing people off. So it's going to be straight contemporary romance, and I don't have the title for it, but I've got it all mapped out. So I've been writing like crazy on that, and it's really nice to escape what's going on outside. No title. Sorry, I'm not very good at promoting my.
That's okay. Nice for readers to escape too with all our work, I'm sure. And Meg, I'm really glad that you showed us that, you know, you've got that golden globe in your room, because if anyone ever intrudes into your room, right, they'll be a goner, right?
Yeah, you don't need a poker. You just bash them over the head with that.
Okay, thanks, Meg.
Sure.
And joining us from North Carolina is none other than Sabrina Jeffries. Sabrina, I've been reading your work for a long time, and New York Times bestselling author, PhD in English literature. And I know that you write fabulous Regency romance. I haven't read any of your work as Deborah Martin or Deborah Nichols, but welcome. Thank you for coming.
I'm glad to be here.
So would you like to show us your writing space and tell us about your next release?
Oh, right. Okay, sorry. I was so concentrated on I meant to have the book. I'm very disorganized. I meant to have the book sitting here, and I didn't. So I did pull it up on the phone. So and look, it's not even going to show it, is it?
You probably need to get a little bit closer.
Really? Like this?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
The
Yeah.
angle,
Move it so we can see the title. Bachelor, it's called.
It's, yeah, the Bachelor, yeah. That's the one that's already out, and then I have one that's coming up in a month and a week. So, and I have one I'm writing that is due in a month. So I'm a little flustered right now, but anyway. So this is my sometime writing space. I actually write in a couple of places. If I have my choice, I write on my deck. But since it's dark right now, I debated, should I show them the darkness and the fireflies and whatever? But so if I can do that, I mean, I can stay out there. I have a box fan, and I can stay out there as long as it doesn't get above 91 degrees, I can be comfortable. But if it gets worse than that, which does happen, it is, after all, still the South in the summer. So if that happens, then I'm in this office, which is my writing office. I sort of have let's see, I tested this before. This table moves. So I'm sorry, I can put the overhead light on. The problem is it's really bright. So I don't know if that.
Oh
Yeah,
that
that's
looks like a lovely
Better or worse, I don't know. But this is, it was set up originally. I had two chairs for when my parents came, and then we had to add a chair because the rest of us had nowhere to sit, and so we all would crowd into this little office if we're all here. And this is my very large beverage. Can you see it? My very large beverage station. Since I drink a lot of different things, I have to have a large station. And I have the most crucial of my research library in here, but in the other office, which is way, way bigger, because it used to be a bonus room, and my husband refuses to come upstairs to be in a bonus room. So it has built in just all kinds of books, and I really need to start thinking about getting rid of them. Now there's just two of us, so we really do not need all the space. Anyway, so that's my office. Should I leave that light on? See should I leave
It's
that
hard
light
to
on?
see you when we had the overhead light on.
What?
I said we don't see you as clearly with the overhead there. That's
I know it's really I'm gonna go turn it off. It's really it's very bright. And I like a bright light normally, but I like this little lamp. I feel like the little lamp is better. So
Well, that looks lovely. Thank you very much for that. So I'm going to finish off the introduction to the writing space, and I am Alyssa, and I also write contemporary romance novels under Alyssa J Montgomery, and I write medieval romance novels under Alyssa James. So I'm south of Sydney. I have a royalty box series coming. I'm growing my fringe out with this COVID, and it's really annoying. Sorry, and going grey. So new look. I'm having a royalty box series out in September, and my next release is actually on the 4th of November, the single title, and it's called 5 Dates with the Billionaire, published by Escape Publishing Harlequin, and it's basically about... Sorry?
Sorry. I said you were prepared. See, you had the book and all. That's
I
great.
was. Well, I've got the postcard because it's an ebook. But anyhow, so this is about a couple who are blackmailed into dating by an ill grandmother. And unfortunately, the fact that they are dating and he's so high profile exposes her to public scrutiny. And she actually, that puts her life in danger because she has a very dangerous secret. She's witnessed a murder. And of course, this then brings her out into the open. So it causes all sorts of problems. So that's the one that's coming out in November. And as for my writing space, you are going to get a tour because I have done my hallway. You're not going to see because that's where I stashed everything. But let me just see if I can flip this around now. Can I do it? Yes, I can. Okay. So I guess the nicest thing I like about my writing room is the view. So we're up in the hills. And we're on 5 acres, and I often can see little goats down there butting heads together. They're not there right now. So that's one of my windows. And then I sort of come around here, and this is where I sit writing sometimes. Sometimes I'm on the couch, sometimes I'm in bed. And then I've got another little nice garden out here that I can look out onto. So I find that really peaceful. And my dog sometimes sits there. Now, this looks very egotistical with all these book covers everywhere, but I've got to tell you that it's actually very sweet because my children, when I first got my first novel published, they said to me, Mum, you know, we really want you to have something nice. You haven't got a real book. It's not in print. So we're going to print this cover and frame it for you. So they presented it with me, and they've done that for every single title. Now, they obviously don't think that I'm going to write as many as you, Sabrina, or Dani, or Meg, because the wall space is going to fill up really quickly. But it's really nice. I really enjoy the fact that they're so thoughtful, and, you know, they say to me, oh, we get medals for going to this and that, and you don't get anything, so no awards. So here's your little trophy and keepsake. So it's quite nice. And it sometimes just looking at those titles gives me the confidence that, hey, I can do this. So yeah, keep going. So that's my writing space. Now we're going to go to the questions, and we don't have a lot of readers who've linked in, but we have got a lot of questions. So I'm going to ask Dani first to ask, Malvina to ask Dani a question. If you'd like to switch on your, there we go.
Hi, Dani.
Hi.
I'm not usually a presents reader, although I did read The Intense and Very Wonderful Consequence of His Revenge fairly recently. Now, which of your other books would you recommend for a sweeter reader like me?
If you're reading any of my presents, it's going to wind up, it depends what you mean by sweet. So if you mean not so much the sexy times, all of my Harlequin presents always have some lovemaking on the page. But if you want something that's super sweet and only has a kiss, I would recommend Wedding at Mistletoe Chalet, which is one of my Thule titles. And it's a lovely little Christmas book.
Thank you.
Yes.
That sounds lovely.
Thanks for the question. Right. Thanks for the question.
Meg, you have a question from Courtney, who hasn't joined us today. And she says, I'm a great fan of Meg Tilly, and 2 years ago was the first time I've ever read a romance novel with the release of her Solace Island series. Since then, I have been in awe. I was wondering what it was like going into the romance genre for the first time and how you come up with the challenges for your characters.
Well, I'm really excited that I turned her to the light side. Thanks, Courtney, for the question. So it's interesting because I've written, my book that's going to be coming out next, that's my 10th book. Nothing again like Sabrina or, you know, some of you, but for sure, I started off writing literary and then I shifted over. So how it was writing for me, I didn't mean to write at all. I was somebody who didn't know I was a writer, and then I found I had to write about my life, and I gradually wrote about really terrible things, but I would read romance, and then I'd write about lighter things as I was going, but I still read romance. And, you know, I'd read the literary when I was younger and thinking I had to be articulate, especially because I was an actress, so I didn't want people to think that I didn't know. So I read my way through the, you know, through literary and through the classics, but I kept reading romance. And then, so for some people, they feel like, oh, I wish I could write, you know, the other stuff. But for me, romance was the golden chalice. And then my friend talked me into doing, trying to do one on my own because okay, it's a long story. So okay, we've got a bunch of us. But anyway, so in a way to support him, I was like, sure, I'll do it. And then I thought, this is my chance. He talked me into throwing something online, and his brother had just died and he was staying with us and he was really sad. And he'd been trying for several years to get me to do this. And I had only done traditional publishing. So I thought, well, so I said, okay, I'm gonna do it. And he cheered right up because I was really worried because he's, you know, he just turned 80. But so I said, I'll do it. And then he cheered right up and he's like, okay, this is what you gotta do. And I thought, I'll write a romance. Nobody will know it's me. I came up with my moniker, Sarah Flynn, and that's what I was gonna write. And then what happened is I wrote it, but then then Berkeley Penguin picked it up, and then Jane Ann Krentz had blurbed it because she loved it. Somebody had gotten it to her. And I'm like, okay, but that's another story. But Jane Ann Krentz, like, I love her. And she told me, don't use a different name. She said, I wish I hadn't, just do Meg Tilly. So I said, okay. So that's how I shifted into romance. I did it sideways. And when I was Sarah Flynn, because I tried before as Meg Tilly, but then it always turned dark and there was bad stuff and, you know, but then when I was Sarah Flynn, I wrote, like, it's romantic suspense, but there's a bit of humor and but it isn't clean, Malvina. It isn't clean. So it might not be for you because they do have intimacy, but it's wrapped up in. So that's how I switched over to romantic suspense. And now I'm even easing into just romance without bad guys leaving dead bodies lying all over the place. So it's really, I just love it. I feel so happy. The best thing about it was becoming a part of the romance community because I was just reading in my cupboard, like in my closet. Nobody knew. I had covers for my books. I have been keeping the romance community afloat single-handedly. I've read thousands and thousands. And so now I'm like meeting all my heroes, and it's just amazing. It's the best. It's the best. So Courtney, you know, once you're in, can't get out.
Thank you, Meg. Now, Maria has a question for Sabrina, and she hasn't joined us either. Sabrina, what inspired you to write the Harlequin series? It's one of my favorites, by the way, and I got everything you wrote since and before. And will you bring back another series spinning from your school of heiresses characters? Another of my faves. So thank you for those who they gave me solace on my not so great times. So first question.
The Hellions series actually was based on something I had read that was historical. I read about this family who the oldest son was the Earl, and he had a sister and two brothers. and they were raised by their grandmother, and they were so wild that they all had nicknames in society. One of them was called Newgate, one was called, oh shoot, it's gone, right? It's been a while, I should have looked it up. But anyway, each one of them had a name that showed that they were wild. The sister's name had to do with her being having a fishwife's tongue. In other words, she cursed a lot, which I really liked. I was like, there you go. That's really unusual in the Regency, and there you go. But so I sort of did it from there, but then I also threw in that the grandmother wanted them all married and out of her hair once and for all, and all of that. So the hero of that series spun off from the School for Heiresses, which is why she was talking about it, because I had this secret in the School for Heiresses that people weren't supposed to know who the benefactor of the school was. And throughout the series, there were letters between the headmistress and the benefactor that went back and forth for each chapter. And so I got about halfway through the series and was winding down, and my publisher said, oh no, we want more books. And I ended up with 6 books. And so I had to add some characters in the fourth book. I had to add some. I'm like, I need some red herrings, because everybody, I mean, if it ends, I was planning to end it here. And so I threw in 2 guys, and one of them was so, had so much personality that everybody thought that it was him. I mean, I actually took a poll of my readers, and they all thought it was him, and they were all disappointed when the last book came out and it wasn't him. And I was like, so he had to have his own series. And so but there's no one else I can think of in that series that I didn't do something with. I'm pretty sure they all ended up, there's only one character that did not end up with a book, and I'd like to write a novella for him sometime, but I don't think he has enough personality for a book. But other than that, I hadn't had any plans to spin off anybody from Heiresses, sorry. But my new series is Duke Dynasty, and I'm enjoying that, so writing that.
And it's going to be a fabulous series, I know. So we all love your series, Sabrina. Keep it coming. Now, we've just been joined, just in the nick of time, by Cassandra Samuels, who is actually a Regency author herself. And Cassandra, welcome. And you have a question for me.
Yes, I do. Thank you for having me. Sorry I'm late. I had some difficulties. I just want to know how you handle your life writing balance, because, you know, I know you also work and you have children, and in these difficult times, I was just wondering how you do it yourself.
I can't juggle. So basically, I'm like a juggler that's learning for the first time. I often feel that I'm trying to juggle and all of those balls, trying to keep them all up in the air. And I think most of the time they end up on the floor. I have a fabulous, supportive husband, and my kids are older now, although they're all still at home. They're more independent, so that's great. There have been many times when I've said to them, look, you know, the door's it's going to be closed, and unless, you know, you're bleeding to death, don't come and disturb me. And they're fabulous like that. The COVID situation has thrown in a whole new ball game, because my husband is an international pilot, so he has been stood down from his work. So whereas before that he was the primary breadwinner and I was doing a little bit of speech pathology to keep my hand in, and because I enjoy it, I was able to concentrate on my writing. Now, of course, that he's been stood down, I'm the primary breadwinner, and I'm lucky to be in a profession where there is a huge need for private practice in the area that I'm in, and it's just taken off in a massive way. I've been a couple of times this week, I've worked 16-hour days. I've started with kids at 7 o'clock in the morning so that they can get off to school. Although it's been school holidays, but they've had those time slots as a regular thing. And I've still been doing paperwork at midnight and plans for the next day. So I have actually contacted my publisher and said, look, you know, we've got edits due now, but it's going to be a while before I can get something in. So there will be less volume produced by me in the near future until things sort out. And of course, once I've taken on these kids, I'm not just going to, if my husband goes back to work, I'm not just going to abandon them. So now that I've got them, then my practice will be busy for a while. So, yep, a juggler with some balls in the air and a lot on the floor, Cassie.
Yeah, sounds like they're all different shaped balls too.
Oh, yeah. Dani, you have a question now from Elaine. Thanks for joining us, Elaine. Is Elaine still there?
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me. Dani, you're a prolific writer. You've got so many books out there. How do you get your inspiration for new books?
Thanks for the question, Elaine. I don't even know. It's a lot of people often ask me that question, and I really struggle because I think initially I just had so many ideas in my head, so many voices that I just had to get them out, and that's what got me started. And then now, yeah, there's times where I'm like, oh goodness, a book is due. Where's that going to come from? And actually, when I do get that point where there's nothing in the well at the moment, I put it out to readers. And even if somebody just says, oh, I like a mistress, blah, 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 I'll go, okay. And then I can start to play with it and go from there. But yeah, I would say, okay, readers are my best well of ideas. Thank you.
Great. Meg, you have a question from Malvina.
Oh.
Hi, Meg.
Hi.
You're obviously very multi-talented, dancing, writing, acting, some award-winning children's books. Congratulations on your wonderful career. What do you like writing the best? But I think you've already answered that. And do you think you'll continue to write for children as well as adults?
I don't know. Like, I'm really surprised that, and thanks for the question, I'm really surprised that I'm writing romance. I don't see myself, you know, not, but I guess you never know, because I never knew I was going to write a book at all. I never knew I was going to write children's books, and that was fine too. But I really like what I like to read, I just like it. And I love the romance community as well. You know, when I did my first couple, I would go and there would be these things and you'd be invited, and it was a lot of men and a lot of, can you say dick measuring? You can say, yeah. There was a lot of like, hey, you know what I mean? But here, yeah, here it was just like a big hug, and it just the generosity that I've experienced. So that's part of the draw for me as well. Is just, you know, feel like-minded people, meeting them when I go out and I meet the readers and I meet the other authors. I mean, it's not saying everything's roses, because, you know, you're always gonna meet someone and be like, ooh, scary. Oh, scary. Oh, she's over there. Scamper, you know. But so I think I'll probably be continuing to do this. I'm blessed that I don't have to. I'm blessed that I can write what I like, so I can take my time finding the right person for the love interest, or you know, yeah. So I might write some more, but I might not. I guess I never say never. I sometimes get offered movie stuff, but I'm too happy writing right now. But again, people say, have you quit acting for good? And I don't know. I just, right now, I really am enjoying doing what I'm doing. And so that's what I'm doing.
Well, we're all benefiting.
Thanks.
Thank
and
you.
there's that lovely warm glow of romance. You know, we are, it's very much a case. I remember Stephanie Lawrence said once of, you know, a high tide floats all boats, and, you know, our readers are voracious. So we can't keep up the volume to our readers that they enjoy. And I think it's great the way people can cross promote and support each other in this industry. Even though it's competitive, it's actually not. I haven't never found it so. So I agree with you there, Meg. It's a lovely community. Sabrina, I have a question from Regine, and she writes, have you ever been in a situation when you started writing and at the middle of this progress, you're not sure about what you're writing anymore, especially as you're writing a long novel? What can you advise writers who are in that situation?
Well, I'm in that situation right now. Usually when it took me a while to figure out my process, which is that at chapter 9, I go, what was I thinking? This was the stupidest idea. I should have started with this instead. This was wrong. And of course, I always, well, not always, but half the time I call my agent and say, I think I'm going to scrap the first 9 chapters and I'm going to go this way instead. And she goes, no, that's not a good, what she will do, I'll say, I think I should do this, this, and this. And she'll say, but then what about this? And then what about this? And it's like, you're just ruining it because I don't have answers for those questions. So I press on, and then I start liking the book, and it's going really well. And at chapter 18, around chapter 18, it's an even thirds here. I go, I've boxed myself, I've painted myself into a corner, and I can't solve this. And so I have to take a few days to figure it out. Both times I have to take a few days to figure it out, and sometimes I have to go back and change things. So all I can say is, if you find yourself in that place, get someone who can ask you the same kind of questions my agent is asking, which is, if you throw this out and try something else, where would you go with it? And then they can ask you the hard questions that make you think, well, it's not easy no matter which way. You're always looking for the easy out if you're a writer. What is the easy out? And there's never an easy out. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, I would say, I do all kinds of things. I walk, I take hot baths. I do anything that will disengage my conscious mind and will let my subconscious work. And then, usually I come up with a solution, but sometimes it takes me a week or 2. That's why I'm such a slow writer.
Well, that's great. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful way to do it. And yes, it's great to have a sounding board, isn't it? Somebody you can critique partner or an agent or an editor that you can contact and really bounce ideas around and solve things together. I have a question from Kathy, who's not with us today, and she says, have you got another series in the pipeline with Escape? Well, that's a pretty quick answer. Yes, I have. I spoke to my editor in August of last year about doing a rural series, an Australian rural series, and as I said before, that's now on the back burner, so I don't know when I'll have that to her. The ideas are all there, they're all formed, and the characters are formed, but I just haven't had a chance to get to the computer at this stage. Thanks for the question, Kathy, and I'm sorry you couldn't be with us. Dani, you have a question also from Kathy, and that's, how do you balance your writing schedule for Harlequin and Thule?
Yeah, good question. I have been writing. When I first started out, I've been writing for 8 years now. And when I first started out, I was determined, because it took me a long time to publish, that I was going to write as many books a year as I could. And, 7 years in, I was starting to feel the burnout, and I thought I have to make a change. And so I have scaled back a little bit. I haven't actually written for Thule for about a year, possibly 2. I didn't have any new books with them for about a year. And I have worked on some other stuff that I've sent to my agent. But I don't want to burn out. So I'm just being a little bit more careful about how many books a year I'm taking on. So that's my question, or my answer to that one. But thank you for the question.
Okay. Meg, there's one for you from Jacqueline. And she writes, what does inspire you? Music, a portrait?
I guess I never know what's going to trigger something. Sometimes I'll be casting around for something, and somebody will just start talking to me. I'll just hear a voice really clearly, and then I grab a hold of it and climb up the tail of it. You have to do it right away because it's like a dream. It'll just evaporate. Or sometimes I'll get an idea like, the thing I'm doing now, it was triggered by somebody, making a joke about something, and my feeling of no, I'm not that, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, and it just kept coming up, and so then I kept on, and so then that was my way in. And then I used a bit of when my dad died, I felt it. I was in the gym and I felt what happened to him. So I'm using that as a kicking off place for my my heroine and her resistance of sometimes having that kind of knowledge. So it's like different things inspire different things. Most of the time I try to write something that I think, oh, this will be fun to read. Like, oh, this will be fun to read. But so I guess different things, usually not a portrait, although I will collect pictures. Like if I'm working on something, I'll say, okay, where do they live? And I'll look, you know, I'll figure out where the location is, and then I'll go through houses for sale. And then until I find the house or the apartment so that helps center it. Different things like that, a hairdo, you know, hair color, I don't know. I have them all up there, and then you never know what's going to trigger it. Food.
I know a lot of authors use some Pinterest. They put pictures on Pinterest when they're developing their ideas, and that's been really interesting to see. Thanks, Meg. Sabrina, Dorothy writes, do you have any adaptations in the works?
I wasn't sure what that meant, so I'm assuming she means like film, or like Julia Quinn's doing with Netflix or something.
I think that was my understanding, yes, when I read it.
Okay, well, nobody has ever approached me, so the answer is no. You know, if anybody ever approached me, I would consider it. But
well, I'll ask a bit more on that question then. If you could choose one series, which would you like to see made into a little mini series?
Hellions, probably.
Yep. Okay. Well, that'll keep a lot of readers very happy if that ever happens. I've got a question now from Malvina.
Hi again, Sabrina. Look, you've had a marvellous career. You've won many awards and accolades. Just congratulations on all of that.
Thank you.
Now, I'm going to go a little bit left field with my question. Don't feel under...
hang on a minute. No, I was wondering why the awards were. This was for me. My
oh,
turn.
sorry.
No.
Oh, sorry.
I was like, I got 2 in a row.
All right. For you, Alison. Okay. Alyssa, sorry. You know I'm a fan. Your medieval books are fabulous, as well as your modern romance. Now, do you have any thoughts about more historicals? You've just said that there's a country romance next in the pipeline for you, but what about more of your lovely historicals?
Well, the moments that I can get to the keyboard, and I've set aside one Thursday every fortnight just for writing. So I am going to still try and keep some work up, but I have let Escape know that there won't be anything until I've finished this 3rd medieval. It's been supposed to be coming for years and it hasn't happened. My niece one of my nieces has posed with her boyfriend at the time in our back paddock. He was in a suit of armor, she was in the medieval frock. We had the horses in the background, and we have the most beautiful photos for the cover. I've got the title, I've got the story, so I'm actually the time that I can get to the computer now, I'm writing that 3rd medieval. So when it will be out, I don't know. There was another question from Kathy along the same lines, asking me about the storyline. The first book, Night of Her Heart, was about Lord Rowan, who was a knight, and then the second one, Night of Her Dreams, was about his brother Richard, and the third one that I'm working on, Night of Her Desire, is about the heroine from the first book, her sister. So it's her sister's story. So I'm particularly keeping this one in mind. There's a lady who's a member of ARRRLD called Lynn Williams, and I'm going to dedicate this book to her because she is constantly, I'll say very nicely, encouraging me, I won't use the word nagging, to get this book written. So that will be the next thing that's being published after the contracts that are already out through Escape. Thanks for your question. Now we've got a question from everyone, and I thought I tried to keep all the questions, the ones that came to all of us, I divvied up most of them, but where there was a quick answer, I have kept them as for everyone. And there's one from Sarah Taylor. I'll get you to answer these in order of Dani, Meg, Sabrina, and then I will answer. And the first question is, who inspired us to become writers? Dani.
Every romance book I ever read. I just wanted to do this for a living, and I do.
Fabulous. And Meg?
I started writing because I felt I would choke if I didn't talk about my life, and so that's kind of what started me writing, is just preservation. But the ones that inspired me mostly are my romance writers, my Jane Ann Krantz, and I read a lot of Nora Roberts starting out, and then just like Eloisa James, and lots of them, lots and lots and lots of them.
Great. And Sabrina?
Mine wasn't a person in particular. I started writing what I would consider, reading what I would consider to be romances when I was about 10 or 11. And so at 12, I remember I had 3 romance ideas in my head. And I thought, when I grow up, I'm going to write these down and sell them. So I always say that at 12, I decided I was going to be a romance writer, and I took some detours along the way. But so that was just the stories, I guess, is what made me want to do it.
Inspired you. Mm-hmm. And for me, I think it was my sisters, because my sisters challenged me to write a romance. So they got me on the path, because they said, you write a romance, go on, you can do it. So it took a long time before one reached publication, but I soldiered on, and I think it's been a great lesson for my kids, me seeing mum getting reject letters and then not giving up. So I think that's been a really important lesson for my children, that everything's achievable if we really work hard at it. And hopefully I've inspired them to pursue their dreams, although they won't be writing dreams, but to pursue them and be dogged about their determination and not to give up. For all of us, there's a question from Regine, and that is, what is your advice to aspiring writers?
Me first?
Yeah, Dani?
I always tell new writers that the writing part of it is yours and nobody can ever take it away. So even when you do get those rejections, it doesn't mean that you have to stop. It just means that the publishing side is a business, but the writing is always yours. Let it be your joy. Don't let anybody take that away from you. So.
Right. Meg?
Yeah, I think that for me, like acting, you have to get permission to act. Somebody has to hire you, but writing, you can just do it. So you can dive into the story and get the joy of it and the pleasure of it. And also you can write something, but let the critic be outside for a while, because you can always rewrite and rewrite and rewrite and make it better. So don't, be kind to yourself when you're starting out, and don't be like, just know that's something that then you add more flavors to and more layers to, and go in deeper.
Mm-hmm. Sabrina?
I always just say, write what you love. When I started writing, I liked contemporary's okay, but I loved historicals. And I started with a contemporary because I thought, well, that's a lot of research for a historical and whatever. And my critique partner, who became my critique partner, said, if you like historicals, write those. That's what you should do. And she was also the person down the line who said, if you like Regencies, write them, because that's all I read. And so I would always say, write what you love, because that comes across in the writing. Don't write what somebody has told you is the big hot thing, or write what you love.
Mm-hmm. Sound advice, and I don't think I can add anything else except just keep going and don't let it get you down, those rejection letters. They're part of the learning process, and I think, well, I will add something else. I mean, if I look back at my first couple of books now, I honestly wish I could take them off the market, because we're always growing and developing, and hopefully in 10 years time with what I'm writing now, I'll do the same thing. And if I can, I know that I will have grown and got better as a writer. So yeah, just keep going. Helen Sabrit has written, was there a reason you chose to write romance, and is there another genre you would like to try? Well, Meg, I know that you've already tried some. Have you got anything to add to that?
No, I just write until it doesn't make my heart happy anymore. And there's some days where your heart isn't happy when you go into write, because you're writing and you're 6 hours in the chair and you just are brick walling. But as long as it makes my world a bigger, better, brighter place, I'll keep doing it.
Mm-hmm. And Dani, romance, are you ever wanting to branch out into any other genre?
I will never say never, but I need my happy ending. It has to be uplifting on some level. So I don't see myself writing horror.
Okay. What about you, Sabrina?
I spent 6 years getting a PhD in English literature and reading nothing but literary fiction. And when I finished, I said, I am going to read what I love. I am not going to read what people tell me to read and what is supposed to be what we should all read. I'm done with that. Did enough of that for a lifetime. I'm going to read what I love. And I feel the same way about writing. I love writing romance, and that I don't feel this yearning to write. I mean, if I wrote anything else, it would be another romantic subgenre, like romantic suspense or something like that. That is the only way, I would change from what I'm writing now. So.
Well, I enjoy dabbling in the contemporary and the medieval, and I particularly love all the research for the history. And I feel that you can do a lot more with things in history, because the rules weren't, we didn't have the law society that we have today, the legalities. I probably will go down the line more of romantic suspense. I think I'm finding there's a lot more danger element and a lot more life-threatening intrigue in the last few stories that I've written. I had a golden offer last year. Celeste Bradley has offered to mentor me, but she feels I should be going more into women's fiction, and I can't get into it, I'm afraid. So I don't know about that, but but I think maybe romantic suspense. Elaine, you had a question for everyone as well. You still with us, Elaine?
Yes, I just had to unmute.
Sorry.
That's all right. Look, I think probably you've all answered the question anyway in different forms. I was just looking at how many books some of you have written and how quickly you've written. I just thought, is there a time limit that you have to write a book? I mean, do you have a certain time that you take to write a book, or as Sabrina has already said, that sometimes she gets a block and it might take a little bit longer? But is there a general time you try to get that book written in?
Would you like to go first, Dani?
I typically have a contract to write 4 books a year with Harlequin. So then that basically means I have 3 months to write a book. And then if I want to write something more, then I have to hurry my deadlines. So it is possible for me to write, and there are only 50,000 words. So it's possible for me to finish one in 4 to 6 weeks. When I'm in my best groove, I write about 2,000 words a day. So that's just, if I happen to be writing something longer, it's going to take longer, and then I need time for revision after that. But that's kind of the inexact answer.
Mm-hmm. And Meg?
I don't have a specific time. So my first book took me 4.5 years from start to finish. My second took 10 years. And then I wrote some others that didn't take as long. I find the romance comes out of me a little bit faster, just because it's what I've been reading for decades. I'm 60 now, and it's like what I've been reading. So it just felt like a comfortable rhythm. Like I hadn't learned how to ride that horse, but once I was on it, it's like, oh, so I have the sort of, so that I guess now, I don't know, it takes maybe a year per book, maybe sometimes a little bit shorter. I just take as long as it needs, because I want to enjoy it as well.
Mm-hmm. Sabrina?
The shortest I've ever written a book in was 4.5 months. And that was way at the beginning of my career. As I get older, I have a lot of, I'm on a lot of medications for cervical arthritis and a bulging disc in my neck. And if I sit too long writing, I will get, horrible headaches and and real pain in my neck. And my brother says it's appropriate that you have a pain in your neck because you are a pain in the neck, and I have a pain in my butt, and I am a pain in the butt. I also didn't say the word butt, but anyway. So yeah, so that has changed things, and also my elderly parents both had strokes in the last couple of years, and my mother died from hers. My father is in a nursing home, and his 4 kids are trying to, we can't see him because of COVID. And we think the isolation was one of the reasons my mom had her stroke. So we're dealing with trying to get their estates straight. And in the meantime, my husband and I went, we better get our estate straight. So next thing I know, we're going to lawyer meetings and everything. So yeah, right now it's taken me about 7 months, and I get done in 7 if I'm lucky. But that's what I contracted for.
Yeah. And I have been able to write, 75,000 word contemporary book in 3 months. And that's with everything else, and that's heavy dialogue. So I find the dialogue really flows. A lot of my books are very much dialogue, and that just pours, and I can write so many thousands of words a day if I'm just, doing the dialogue and then going back and filling things in. The historical romance, no. It takes me at least 6 to 8 months to write something medieval, and I think probably I get a bit sidetracked because I love the research so much. But yeah, so that varies, and of course now it's anyone's guess when I'll get another book out. Evelyn, you have joined us, and welcome, and I'm sorry that you've waited so patiently to ask your question to all of us.
Hi there. Yes. What is the hardest thing about writing romance novels?
Dani.
Hi, Evelyn. It's so good to see you.
Hi.
I would say the hardest part is staying fresh, because I am very prolific. And so it's very easy to just pick the low-hanging fruit of whatever I wrote yesterday or in the last book. So I have to really dig deep to find something fresh.
How about you, Meg?
I would say the first was finding my way, because into the intimacy where it was out of the hearts and the actions and necessary. And then also, I think the hardest part was then when my husband, because he's my first reader, would read it. He'd be like, "Huh? No, that's her. This isn't a guide to try something out." So, but I don't know. It was that, I think the hardest part was the fear of, I wrote those other books, but romance, I don't know if I'm good enough. I want to write something that's going to lift people and give them that cozy feeling that I get, and that safe feeling of knowing that you're in sure hands and going to get to the end and feel like it was time well spent. So that's the biggest thing, is not wanting to let other people and myself as a reader down.
Well, you don't, so that's good. How about you, Sabrina?
I'm a very plotty writer, and it sounds like you and I write a lot alike, because I also do a lot of dialogue. And like one of my critique partners, I have 3 critique partners, and they all do different things for me, and I guess I do a different thing for them. But one of them is really about the emotional part, and I don't know why, but I don't have any trouble writing the dialogue. It's all, for me, all the emotions in the dialogue and in the plot. And she's always like, "I want to see their emotional reaction." I'm like, I gotta put feeling stuff in there. Oh, please don't I just am not, that's knowing when you're going too far and knowing when it's not enough. I never have felt comfortable with that balance. I feel like I have to relearn it every book or something. So that's the hardest part for me.
Well, Evelyn, you've certainly opened up some ideas for us here. And I have to agree with Meg, it's the intimacy and just keeping that fresh. So Dani's comment about keeping it fresh, but also, you know, how many different ways can you write an intimate scene? And so you really have to try and, you know, make it from that character and understand your character really well. But I find the older I'm getting, the less interested I am. And even when I get to those books, I'm sort of flicking through them, and then I go, oh, I've got to write it again, you know, because readers expect it. So, so I would say that's definitely the most challenging thing for me right now. Margaret, stop laughing. Margaret has written to us all, do you write one book at a time? Dani?
Yes, but I'm often revising something, so I'll have to stop, and then because I get a revision letter, or there's times too when I'm working on something completely different because I'm working on spec, and so I'll have to stop and then write a contracted book and then move on from there. So kind of yes.
Yes. Meg?
I found my last book was really difficult because I'd been hired. I'd written a screenplay for Dave Matthews had hired me to do a screenplay for him, and then Lionsgate bought it and they wanted me to rewrite it. So I had to put down the manuscript that I had for Penguin Berkeley and do that. And I found that really, really difficult. And I found it very hard to get back into the story. And then the minute I would send the script off, then they would want the other, I'd start writing the other. So that I find it very difficult. I can only do one, but the series I'm writing now, the new one, I'm writing her story, but I have another folder that I'm putting things for the next two in the series, because it's like this. So then it's like, oh, got to put that up here. So I'm writing the one, but I'm writing the connections too. So this document's getting longer and longer, but I don't know if that's writing them at the same time, but my head's writing them like, oh, yes, and then that. Okay, okay, now back to this.
How about you, Sabrina?
Early in my career, I wrote for 2 publishers, and I wrote historicals for one and romantic suspense for the other. And I actually tried to go back and forth, and I couldn't. I have to immerse fully in the book. I just have to. So I can write one at a time. I can do what Dani's talking about, where you know, you do get those revision letters. They always come at the most inconvenient time, and you have to pull yourself out of the book and take care of them. But I don't consider that really writing at the same time, although it does require going back and forth between characters. And I would add in there that then when you're promoting a book, you have 3 books in your head, and that's the hardest for me. But anyway.
Yep. And I'll, sorry, Meg?
Oh, I was saying, what about you, Alyssa? Because you're always asking us, and then I thought it must be hard for you to be like, oh yes, and then. So I was just.
Well, thank you. Yeah, look, I only write one book at a time, but I've often got a storyline that's percolating there that needs to be written. So make little notes every now and again, but definitely only. And particularly just the medieval style or just the contemporary style. And Harlequin did actually ask me to use a different pen name. So that's why I'm writing under 2 pen names, because they said your historical and your contemporary voice are so very different. So that's why I came up with the 2 different pen names. Now we're way over time, I'm sure. So we'll try and scramble through these last few questions. And I'm going to combine 19 and 20 and give this one to you, Dani. Dani, Lynn has asked, if you're plotting, is there a method you use to give your story the best possible structure?
Yes, I use a combination of the hero's journey and Dwight Swain's scene and sequel. And I will, because it sounds almost like she's an author looking for advice, I will post some links on my website if she wants to pop in there and look on my under news.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Now, Meg from Lynn, how do you plot a series? And I think you've kind of alluded to that with your notes in folders, but would you like to add anything else?
Nope, that's what I'm doing, but it's my first time doing that. So that's why I was also like, hey, I'm doing this, but it's my first time. The other one was kind of just slapdash, like, oh, I'm doing this book and I'll do the sister, and oh, well, Zelia, I felt sorry for her, I'll do her. So that it's sometimes the character that comes up in one of the others where you're like, well, that wasn't fair. I'm going to give her story. And so that's how it happens for me, but I don't really know. This is the first time I know who people are who are going to be the next ones and what and who they get to fall in love with.
That crystal ball. Okay. Sabrina from Lynn, what's your writing routine to allow you to get your writing done?
Okay, so I'm ADD and I can't follow a schedule to save my life. My poor son, who is autistic, and he's pretty severely autistic, and they tell you to follow this really strict schedule, you know, and prepare them for everything. And we really tried, but we couldn't do it. And as a result, he's pretty laid back. He actually adapts well, and I'm beginning to think it's because he had two crazy parents who couldn't follow a schedule to save their lives. So I essentially work from the time I get up till the time I go to bed, but I take big breaks for, lunch or supper, or my husband and I watch a show, or, we walk or something. And so I just fill in the writing around that. I'm not a scheduled kind of person very well. I just don't do it very well. So I always said that with my son, we had the ends and the beginning and the end of the day was the frame in which his life was, but anything could happen in that period, and he got used to that. But the day always began the same and it always ended the same. And that's the way I think of my schedule is. I have to, whatever that is, whatever that frame is, anything in the middle can happen. But so.
Okay. Dani, Lynn would like to know, what's your advice to new writers on gaining followers through social media?
My advice is to focus on building your newsletter, because social media changes constantly and they are like money sucks. They want to just pull your money for ads. Whereas if you are building your newsletter, you get to keep those people all the time. And when you contact them, you are the only thing they're looking at. So that's my advice.
Good advice. Meg, Lynn would like to know what writing or publishing mistakes she should avoid.
I would go back to what Sabrina said, and not to write what you think you should write, but write what you're called to write, and what makes your heart happy, because you never know. Maybe somebody will publish it, maybe they won't. Maybe you'll sell a lot, maybe you won't. But the most important thing is being able to have that creative process, and to be able to have something that you created and to be proud of it, and to feel like you wrote something and said something about the world in whatever way you do that makes you feel like you added something. It's that children's book, the Miss Rumphius, who said but you have to do something to make the world more beautiful. And I think that romance writers do. They give people hope and lift them up when I was feeling alone and scared, or it was so I think that's what you do. Don't worry about impressing other people, or just write something that lifts your heart, and if it lifts your heart, it'll hopefully lift other people's.
That's lovely. Did anyone else have anything to add on that note of avoiding publishing mistakes? Anything that you wish you'd done differently?
Well, I would say that while I know why Jane Ann Krentz says don't change your name, there are a few cases in which it's probably a good idea to do, and I was glad I did, because my Deborah Martin books were a kind of a different voice. And although Pocket went back and republished them and I edited them some, they're a really different voice. So when I changed my voice, they said, well, this is very different. We think you should take a pseudonym. And it launched my career. And I honestly don't think that would have happened if I had changed my voice and still wrote them as Deborah Martin, if that makes any sense. So there are situations. Jane says that because she's brilliant at every single genre she writes. So yes, she should have just used one name, but I've read her in all her names. So fan. So
yeah, me
Thank
too.
you.
That's interesting. The changing the thing, because I wouldn't have known that. I was worried about that myself.
yeah.
Okay, well, we've come to our last question, and I know we're over time, but thank you all very much. It's been fabulous. The last question is Malvina, and you've got something now to ask to Sabrina.
Thank you. Sorry, I jumped the gun earlier.
No problems.
I'll just continue with the question. Now, I'm going to go a little left field with this question, Sabrina, and don't feel any pressure to answer or anything like that. You talk about your son, Nick, and his autism, and about others who are also on the spectrum with Asperger's. Have you ever written a hero or heroine who are on the spectrum? And if so, how difficult was that?
Okay, so the closest, it's really hard in a historical context, in my opinion, because people just have to pick, there was no word for autism, there was no sense that it existed. I know too well, having read up a lot on autism, that in the past, people who were autistic were pretty much treated as if they were mentally ill and put in institutions. Or in the case of the queen who had the king who had an autistic child, they put him in a cottage in the country with, you know, lots of servants and whatever. But the closest I've come is in my Sinful Suitor series, and that was Edward and what is Edwin? Oh, it's been so long, I can't remember now. But there's a scene in there where the heroine wants to suggest they go on a picnic, and he's like, really? Because that's outside with the bugs and he's being very practical about it. He can't even look at it as romantic. And I read that to my husband, and he started laughing, and I said, and who is that? And he said, me. He was, when Nick was diagnosed, it meant so much to my husband, because he said, oh, that's why I have all these weird things that I've been criticized for all my life. It was just like little lights went off, and it was a very important experience for him. And so I have patterned a lot of my heroes on my husband, for obvious reasons, because I love him and, you know, I think he's a hero. But but I usually don't get really geeky. And whenever I do, I have my critique partner who wants all the emotion. It's not that she doesn't want those, but it's easy for me to really portray them as being very practical and geeky and not very emotional, which actually isn't a true picture of autistic and Asperger's people. But she would say, but I don't identify with this woman at all, because my upcoming book, the heroine's a chemist, and I see her as being Asperger's. And she said, I've got to find some way in there that I can relate. And so I'm doing that, but it's a lot easier when you're writing a contemporary, because that can come up, that this person has that diagnosis. I can't do it in a historical. So the only way I can think of doing it is to make it really extreme. And then I think readers who don't, I mean, my husband spent his whole life being thought of as lesser because he couldn't follow certain things. And so if that happens, you know that there are people going, well, why don't you just, you know, suck it up, or why can't you just do this, or, you know, he can't. And I think that was a big actually advantage when my son was diagnosed for me, was if my son cannot help that he has these extreme sensory experiences with taste and touch and everything. If he can't help it, maybe my husband can't help it either. Because, I was raised by missionaries, and you were supposed to just suck it up, and, you got to go with mom and dad, and yes, it's hard, and yes, you don't understand the language, and this is what we do, and I had spent the first several years of our marriage going, why don't you just suck it up? And then I had to learn that he couldn't. And it made a big difference in our marriage. It made in a way, Nick's autism saved our marriage. And anyway, I'm gonna get all emotional now. But anyway, I write about it as best I can without being able to put a name to it, if that makes any sense.
Thank you.
It does make sense. And that's really covered, I think, too. There was another question by Zena. How difficult was it being a writer with a special needs child? And I think you basically mentioned that before when we were talking about writing schedules and things like that. Yeah. Ladies, it's been so much fun. Thank you very, very much for joining me. And I'm really just so happy to connect with you all again, because it's been, a while since the Book Lovers Convention and the Romantic Times conventions when I've seen you. And we've met some new readers today as well. So that's just been lovely. Thank you, and good luck with everything. And thank you to Laura, our technical
I was going to say thank you, Laura, for all the techno.
Very much. And to ARRLD too. Australian Romance Readers Association is just such a wonderful organisation, so supportive of readers and writers, and doing so much, even, little jigsaws every day, and bringing our reading community together. So if you're not a member of ARRLD, please, join them, because they really are fabulous.